I'm Aaron Cariotti. I'm a physician and director of the Bioethics and American Democracy program at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. For 15 years, I was director of the medical ethics program and a professor at the School of Medicine, the University of California, Irvine.
My name's Alethea Wieland. I'm president and COO of Clinical Research Strategies. We're a boutique contract research organization and executive management consultancy, over 35 years providing services to biotech, medtech, and the pharmaceutical companies.
Hi, I'm Peter Blaney. I'm the CEO of Induran Ventures. It's a general partnership that's focused on the creation of biotech companies.
I'm Concetta Dudley. I'm an attorney and bioethicist and adjunct professor with Johns Hopkins University.
I'm Jennifer Lahl. I'm the president of the Center for Bioethics and Culture. I'm Megan Murphy. I'm a writer and podcaster and the founder and editor of Feminist Current.
What if we had a text editor for DNA in cells? And it turns out that now we do.
Synthetic RNA is a revolution in medicine that most people are not aware of just how much of a revolution that is. I would say this is like medicine going from analog to digital.
The big product of the 21st century are going to be bodies and minds.
And you see, the difference of this fourth industrial revolution is it doesn't change what you are doing, it changes you.
We're going to become increasingly non-biological to the point where the non-biological part predominates and the biological part is not that important anymore.
One definition of this is it's about a time when basically immersive digital worlds become the primary way that we live our lives.
If you take genetic editing, just as an example, it's you who are changed. And of course, this has a big impact on your identity.
So I think we are heading towards the upgrading of Homo sapiens into gods.
Is there something to worry about with medicines? That is, might some of them have side effects? Do we need safety testing? I mean, and we're taking things that are, genetically modified organisms, and we're injecting them in little kids' arms. We just shoot them right into the vein.
Growing up in Nebraska was great. I wouldn't change it for the world. My medical issues started at a very young age. My 4 major medical conditions are complex regional pain syndrome, Arnold-Chiari malformation type 1, thoracic outlet syndrome, and endometriosis. At 17, I was going through treatments, hammering needles into my spine and through my neck and injecting medication over and over and over again. They knew what they were doing to me, and all those treatments were on top of 144 pills. When I chose this experimental therapy, I was hopeful that it was going to take everything away. I was hopeful that I was going to feel great. I was going to get back to working, and I didn't. I got very sick. It didn't work out the way that we'd hoped. I'm Kinsey Lyons, and I was harmed by medical technology. It's been my experience over 35 years that the pharmaceutical and biotech industries are really not helping diseases and patient outcomes. We look at things like the cost of the US healthcare system, the fact that we're actually getting sicker, that more rare diseases are being tackled, and that we have an obesity crisis in the United States. So again, I don't see the health and vitality of citizens going up. In fact, I see them getting sicker and sicker. The lifespans are going down. And so how can that be after having an 80-year, 100-year history in these types of products being developed and we're getting sicker? It doesn't make any sense.
You know, we've been fighting the war on cancer since Nixon was a president. Nixon declared war on cancer, and we're gonna win it. We're gonna beat cancer. Well, we haven't beat cancer. I think we're on 9, 10 generations of antibiotics now because the bugs get fiercer. And then we have to have a stronger antibiotic, and then the bug gets fiercer because it's a germ war. And, you know, so far we haven't won. We haven't been able to, you know, wave the "we won" flag, and the germs haven't waved the white flag. We give up, we surrender. You're right. We're gonna die here. We're no more germ-free.
On the one hand, technology has offered us many wonderful things to make human life better. But on the other hand, there are sometimes concerns that the misuse of technology can not only get to the point where it's not enhancing human health and human flourishing, but it actually becomes dehumanizing. We can take an approach of just becoming a Luddite and saying technology is bad because it's produced things like the atomic bomb. The other extreme would just be to embrace every new technological advance wholesale as automatically a good thing, or sort of the naive view that all technology is neutral, that it's merely a tool that we can use well or that we can use badly. I think that oversimplifies. The really hard problem is navigating that middle space of how do we stay human in the context of really powerful and complicated advances in whether it's digital technology or biotechnology or surveillance technology. How do we navigate those scientific, medical, and technological advances without relinquishing our humanity?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people believe that technology is always for us. They think that new technologies are a service to the people, as though, you know, it's some kind of like charitable donation to us. And of course it's not. I mean, of course, all of this stuff is going to be for profit and maybe for more nefarious ends.
People just see technology, new advancements as progress, and progress is overwhelmingly seen as a positive. You know, when you think about making progress, that usually sounds like a good thing. And so when people hear about a new technology, they go, progress. It's an advancement. We advance in the positive direction. You know, you don't think about advancing in the wrong direction. You think that's going backwards. So I think there's just sort of this air of progress. Any progress means it's good.
So we have to be mindful that law and ethics have not kept up with the speed of technology, with the speed of technology development, which is really a critical thing for us to look at this point in time. As technology gets further out in front of us, we have to make every effort to get law and ethics to catch up with it so we can make realistic, solidly good decisions about how new technologies should be applied and if they should be applied.
Unfortunately, a lot of the issues that we come into in bio, the use of biotechnology, there isn't a line. There is a continuum that you move along, and you will hit a point where you're obviously doing something wrong, but that's not where you started. So, can we develop an ethics that will give us simple black and white rules about what we should or shouldn't do? No, we're not going to be able to get there. But it's our struggle, and we have to do it if we want the species to survive.
Transhumanism, in a nutshell, is a project or an aspiration that seeks to use science and technology to recreate human beings, to fundamentally redesign human nature, to take normal functioning, healthy people, and rather than using science and technology to heal them of disease or improve their functioning if they are disabled, to make healthy people, quote unquote, better than well. Bigger, faster, stronger, smarter, and when taken to its logical conclusion, to even make human beings, in a sense, superhuman. Some transhumanists even talk about at the end of the line here, what we will have is not only two distinct kinds of human beings, but literally two distinct species. One which is Homo sapiens as they now exist, and another which is the enhanced or the recreated or the transformed superhuman being.
I think the idea that transhumanists are trying to create a form of superhuman is very much part of their ideal. We know that might look a number of different ways. So a superhuman in terms of maybe computing power, our ability to think quickly, our ability to live longer, live more robust lives somehow. These things, while interesting objectives, cause a lot of inherent tension from the transhumanist perspective. Because at the end of the day, if those things are accomplished, the question that I would say they then beg is, do these things really move us forward in terms of our humanity, or do they simply move us forward in terms of our ability to apply technology? And then who controls that technology?
In the early days of Christianity, the church's main sort of religious competitor in the ancient world were the Gnostic religions or the Gnostic sects. And there were many different Gnostic sects. It wasn't one unitary phenomenon like the Christian church. But all of these different sects had a few things that they shared in common. And one of those was the belief that the material world was fundamentally something evil, something to be transcended or overcome. So Christianity had ascetical tendencies toward the body. Things like fasting or bodily discipline were important in Christianity because of the doctrine of Christ's suffering and death on the cross, and the suffering could potentially have spiritual value. But even so, Christianity never rejected the human body. It never rejected human reproduction or the messy business of our bodily frame. And the reason was that Christianity posited that the entire world, both spiritual and material, was created by the same good God. Well, the Gnostics did not believe that. Gnostics believed that only the spiritual world was created by a good God, and they thought the material world was created by an evil principle that was sort of acting in opposition to the good God. And this led them to two fundamentally different approaches to the human body. Some of the Gnostic sects took a very stringent, extremely ascetical approach to disciplining the body, like to the point where, fasting to the point of getting really sick and dying. Some of the Gnostic sects said we should not engage in sexual intercourse or bodily reproduction because the body is evil. Other Gnostic sects took kind of the opposite extreme. They would say things like, well, the human body doesn't really matter, so it doesn't really matter what you do with the human body because it's not part of, it's not part of the spiritual world, which is what's really important. And so they would be extreme libertines. They would have, indiscriminate sexual relationships. And while those look on the surface like two polar opposite approaches to the body, they're both undergirded by this same notion that the body isn't good, that it fundamentally doesn't matter. And getting back to the transhumanists, the body is just kind of raw material that we either want to get rid of, right? Upload our minds into the mainframe in the cloud so we can be free of this mortal coil, or the body is just raw material that we can do whatever we want with it. Both of these approaches are a revival of the ancient Gnostics' attitude toward the body.
Medicine has moved from, making us well to making us better than well. The transhumanist belief is that we need to overcome death. We need to become immortal. They're transitioning from this aging body, this mortal soul. It's not terribly happy and can't really perform well anymore. And they're transitioning over to this new being, this post-human future, right? And where we will become something other. Well, I don't think we're ever going to be able to do that. I think it gets back to Mother Nature and that all these tweaking and modifications and augmentations and chips in our brain and CRISPR gene editing kind of stuff will come back and bite us.
When someone suggests I can upload my consciousness, it's a reflection of my consciousness. It's not me. It's like telling someone you have a shadow and the shadow is you. No, it's not. And if you think it's me that gets uploaded into a device, well, if the device gets up and walks away, do you still think it's you? And another question I would have about it is if I've uploaded this consciousness onto a device, if someone hits the delete button, is it murder? If I've uploaded my consciousness and it's that fragile that it can disappear by hitting a delete button, what kind of eternal life form is that? And as humans, we have our consciousness based on our basic senses: sight, sound, touch. That's what informs our consciousness, our senses. If we're uploaded into a machine, how would any of that continue? I think any explanation that anyone gives me is nonsense on its face.
I mean, what are you living for then? Living for nothing? Living to be, hooked up to the internet? People have totally lost sight of what life is and what brings us meaning. We live forever, then for what? To be addicted to pills and on Facebook? I don't know if it's worth it.
It's hard to say no to technology. That's the problem. It's hard to say no because it's just thrust on us. I remember one of my conversations with one of the more extreme, neural network, virtual being kind of transhumanists. And again, because of her compassion, I said, well, are we all going to have to just buy into it? Like, oh, no. We won't force people to participate. We won't make you. We don't want people to have to do this. But, pretty soon you have to do it. Because you're living in a world where everybody else has. And I said, so we're going to be like the Amish? In Lancaster, Pennsylvania, this small little community that still doesn't use cars and, horse and buggies. And she's like, well, yeah, because we would never force people.
If you remember Ajax from Homer's Odyssey and Iliad, there was this old expression in Greece, if the people that the gods wish to destroy, they give enormous power. And these guys are seeking enormous power. If they want to extend life indefinitely, if they want to put their consciousness into a machine that gives them immortality, if they want unbelievable physical power, the ability to switch from one body to another and so on. Yeah, I think they're pursuing that. They're trying to become gods.
Another feature of Gnosticism that it shares with the transhumanists is that Gnosticism was an fundamentally elitist phenomenon. And what I mean by that is, again, in contrast to Christianity, Christianity posited that God's grace is available in principle to all of us. So salvation is possible for anyone. The Gnostics said, no, salvation is only available to a select few who are initiated into the mysteries, who have this, literally the secret knowledge. That's where the word Gnosticism comes from. The transhumanists take a similar attitude and approach to ordinary people that don't have access to the science and the technology, who cannot sort of discern the direction of history and are going to be left behind. They want to stay ordinary human beings while we recreate ourselves into a superhuman kind of species. Well, that's their business, but they're eventually going to be left behind. They're going to be discarded, and it's going to be the select few that see that, our destiny is to embrace the powers that science and technology gives us to achieve these kinds of aims, which again, I argue are fundamentally spiritual. So this ancient Gnostic religion has been around for a long time, and it's been revived at various points in human history. We can see, Renaissance revival of certain practices of alchemy and magic, for example. Transhumanism is the same ultimately the same phenomena. It has this grounding metaphysical beliefs about the world, about the human body, about what makes for a flourishing human life. It has the same elite attitude toward, the few initiated who have the knowledge and therefore the power to be spiritually superhuman versus the ordinary rabble that either needs to be ignored or discarded or left behind on the dustbin of history.
There are those transhumanists that look at humanity as nothing more than an active petri dish for them to do with what they will. They are willing to abandon the rest of us. These are things that aren't intended to truly improve the lives of other people. These are things that feed into a warped worldview. And when a few people come together to pursue that warped worldview, and they also have the monetary means to pursue those activities, we become the subjects of experimentation that should never be taking place.
It can be a force it can actually be used to end the human race. And there are a few people out there actively working to that end, and transhumanists would be among that group. And they have no moral brakes whatsoever. So ethics doesn't even apply for people like that. I don't think they pay any attention to it. It's an abstract that has no purchase on their behavior whatsoever.
In my view, it's a cult.